physiotherapist, Leslie Abrams, who I have seen rather a lot of in the last couple of weeks because I did my back in. And I've roped him in to doing a video with me because when I mentioned my back on social media, I got a huge response of people, and it just sounds like so many people are in pain and so many people seem to have back problems. Obviously, everybody has different issues, and we can only talk generally. However, what I wanted to talk about was when you put your back out or you have back pain without having done serious damage. I mean, I felt like I had slipped a disc. I mean, the pain was so intense, I really felt that I had done something major, and in fact I hadn't. And what you said to me, which really stuck with me, is that you said just a little, in a back, just a little bit of inflammation can cause a world of pain. So can you just tell us what you mean by that?
Sure.
What is going on when people haven't done a serious injury but are in a lot of pain?
So I think the first thing that you mentioned there was that back pain at the moment in the modern world is at epidemic proportions, and it's so common. It's not if you're going to get it, but when you're going to get it. So I think it's an important thing to understand that at some stage in your life, for the majority of your population, you are going to get a back pain episode. So I think to understand what to do and to get the right information about what to do for the best, I think it's an important thing to discuss.
And I wanted to ask you something. I mean, I think just that's so interesting that there was so much back pain around. Has it got worse since the pandemic?
Yes, I would say in clinic, the key things that we see is during lockdown, people could only do a certain amount of exercise during the day. So they would box their exercise time. So if you remember, you could only do an hour's worth of exercise and you were only allowed out for X amount of time. So people were going from not being very active to being completely active in a short space of time. So that negatively affected the ability for people to recover from the movements that they were doing. So that was the first thing. And the second thing is because we were in our home environments, not properly set up with the office-based environments to do our computer-based work, that also then negatively affects your ability to recover.
And of course, we haven't been in lockdown for quite a while now, and and life is sort of normal again, except it's different because there are still a lot of people working from home. I actually, unbelievably, haven't been back to a gym because I got so used to working out, doing YouTube workouts and buying some weights that I haven't made that transition yet. And I think even though we go out, because so many people are working still by Zoom, I still think that people aren't moving around as much as they used to. Would you agree with that?
I would completely agree with that. And I think the thing that we see in clinic is exactly this. People that used to work in an office, that used to commute regularly by default, would do 10 to 15,000 steps a day. Just by the
getting to work and back and in the course of their work.
And because people are not doing that commute anymore, straight away they are not getting the amount of steps and exercise by default that they used to.
Right. So it's not the actual exercise you're doing, it's all the added exercise just from your daily activities.
That is exactly right. And then we also, during the course of our treatments, I had a chat about this concept of load and capacity, if you remember.
No, I've totally forgotten that one. I was probably in too much pain.
So you have a certain capacity to deal with things. So for instance, when you do a walking activity, and let's say you're accustomed to walking 5 kilometers.
Right.
Your body is used to that, you can cope with it because you've got the capacity for 5 kilometers in your legs.
Right.
All of a sudden, if you go way above that, let's say you decide on a whim, I'm going to walk 10 kilometers. The load versus the capacity the body is able to deal with is completely out of sync, which means that the only option is for your body to sort of
But when is that happening? Because we were just saying people are doing less than they used to. Do you mean like in lockdown when people were suddenly going out?
That's right. But
and I mean jogging, because I do remember everybody seemed to be jogging.
Right.
And jogging is quite harsh on the body.
Yes, it is.
I remember in lockdown seeing people who honestly looked to me like they had never exercised in their life,
gosh, yes.
like jogging past and thinking, you know, if you just go for a walk, that would probably be better for
Better
you.
for you, yeah. But I mean, but once again, as we were saying, because you're not doing those 10 to 15,000 steps, your capacity automatically comes down.
So one's capacity is lowering.
That's right. And so then anything that you then do out of the ordinary that is not within your capacity to deal with the load, you will hurt yourself. And so
Okay, this is interesting in my case. So I go away on holiday for 5 days. I did spend a lot of time on a sun lounger, but I also did a bit of walking. I obviously really lowered my capacity because within 24 hours, I woke up the next day, I had a slightly stiff back, and as the day went on, by that evening, I could not move. So what do you think happened? Well, I think you said that I probably did a twisting, somewhere along the line, I did a sort of twisting motion.
Twisting motion. It's very difficult to try and sort of put your finger on exactly what the cause of, let's say, a back problem is.
But what do you think happened in the actual back to cause so much pain?
Many different things can affect, your back. And I think the first conversation I'd like to have is this this concept of like a low load stress on the back. So postural positions that you're in, repetitive movements that you're doing can negatively affect your back. And then you do a movement that is relatively minor and you experience a whole world of pain. So it's the most inconspicuous, sort of smallest movement that sets it off. But once again, it's not that in isolation. It is the low-grade trauma to the spine because of repetitive movements, postural positions, over a period of time that then, causes.
So you mean so when you sneeze or you do some little movement that makes you feel like you've put your back out and you're in pain, you're saying it's actually an accumulative thing, that there have been little things happening, and then you just, in that movement, you're tipping it over the edge.
That's correct. That's
and
exactly
why is it so painful? What is going on?
So in the spine, you've obviously got loads of nerves, muscles that connect to the spine, and it's a very highly vascularized and neurovascular sort of structure.
Right.
So
you have a large amount of nerves in the back.
Correct. So a small injury to a joint or to a muscle is going to automatically make you assume that there's a lot more going on than what there actually is. And like for instance, in your case, I remember you helping out and you were saying that you were scaring your dog quite a bit.
Yes, I did.
Because of the amount of pain.
I terrified her. Well, I had one particular day where I couldn't move. To sit down took me about 20 minutes, and I'm actually not exaggerating, because just lowering onto a chair was so frightening and so painful. And then when I got down onto the chair, I was so uncomfortable. I then had to spend another 20 minutes, but on the way down and on the way up, I was screaming because I was in such, I think I actually came to see you later that day. There was one really bad day, do you remember? And the pain.
So it's interesting actually, and then you experience exactly that. You assume that the pain was so bad that you must have done something really bad to your back. Yeah. And then within, it was probably about a week, I would say, that things were a lot better. Yeah. With the right intervention, the right level of movement, the right understanding of what to do for the best for your back, I think made a big difference.
Well, I was lucky I had you, because I saw Leslie 4 times in that first week. And it happened on the Saturday, and I saw on the Sunday. He actually came in on a Sunday bank holiday weekend. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Thank you. You gave me some little physio exercises that were minuscule. So I had to somehow find my way onto my back, which in itself was quite hard. And then they were tiny, teeny little movements and exercises that I remember you said were just slightly microscopically move the joint and get liquid into the joint, fluid into the joint. And that is when I turned a corner.
Yes. So interestingly enough, when you hurt yourself, the first thing that you want to do is not move because of the pain.
Yes.
So that first 24 to 48 hours is almost the worst amount of discomfort that you would feel throughout the episode of an acute back pain occurrence. And so if you control it with the right levels of medication, like we sort of had a discussion about what you should do with paracetamol, potentially maybe some ibuprofen, but only for that short amount of time, and we can have a little bit more of a discussion about that in just a second. So I think that's important to understand, but then trying to activate and to move as best as possible is the first thing that's actually going to help you to recover quicker.
The message is that people need to keep, even when you have a really bad back, you need to keep moving.
Yes, but you need to move strategically.
Right.
So in other words, you do what the body enjoys and feels good with.
Well, how does one know what to do?
It's very intuitive, you know? And so you go, I've done that movement, how did my body respond? Did it love it or did it not love it?
Like, for example, I was trying, at the very beginning, I was trying to do cat-cow stretches in my back, and it didn't like it. I tried to do child's pose, just resting on my knees and, stretching the lower back like that. Couldn't do it. I tried standing and just, vertebra by vertebra going down. In the first few days, I could not do anything, but I could walk.
Great.
Okay, so in my back, you said there was quite a bit of inflammation.
Yes, based on the symptoms that you had.
Right.
And then there was a case of a mechanical sort of problem. So the joint, the muscle was affected, and then with that comes the inflammatory process.
So when your back is inflamed like that, so you thought I sort of inflamed a couple of joints, and you also thought that I'd maybe irritated a disc.
Yes.
But I definitely didn't slip a disc, because what would the symptoms be with the slip disc?
The symptoms with the slip disc is it's very nervy, and also you tend to have pain at rest when you move and at night as well. So
I did have all that.
So
but didn't you also say that a disc would probably radiate?
Yes.
Like down your leg?
Not always.
Oh, not
always. When you irritate the disc and you cause a nerve entrapment in addition to that, then that is when it will radiate down the leg.
Right.
But not always. So you can hurt the disc, but not have the classical sort of symptoms down the leg.
Right. Because I didn't have. I mean, I had it very specifically on my lower right side. But you said, I think you also said the whole back had sort of gone into spasm.
Correct. As a protective reaction, yes.
To the inflammation?
Well, to the pain.
Oh, to the pain. Oh, so your back goes into spasm when you're in pain?
Yes, it does.
I'm not sure how that protects it. Doesn't the spasm cause more pain?
Well, that's interesting actually, because that's the way the body responds. It's like, it's a way to lock things down so that you don't hurt yourself. And there's like this inhibition of movement. Your body is attempting to protect itself by stopping movement through the painful area.
So what you're saying, you said people should do strategic movement. So
yes.
They should find, I mean, I'm guessing that there are some people with severe back pain who can't walk.
Yes.
In which case you definitely need to see someone,
That is correct. And I think the first message is you have to go and see somebody, because there's so much information available on the internet, and you can type in something into Google and you can get loads of information out there.
And it can be, sometimes it's helpful and sometimes it's misleading and frightening.
Correct, yeah, and I think so that's why it's so good to do little videos like this, to have conversations, because I think people need to hear from a particular, from the experts that almost do the type of work every day, as opposed to just reading a generic piece of information on the internet.
But I think if you're really bad, it is incredibly helpful to see someone. I mean, you really helped me a lot, because you gave me very specific little exercises to do, and there is absolutely, I mean, I'm still doing them. And then, after a few days, you changed when I could move more, you gave me different exercises to do. Correct. Absolutely no doubt. And I also, I went on to an anti-inflammatories, I took Nurofen, which also helped. And perhaps we'll talk about what you take and how you use it in another video, because that's a whole other thing. But and I'm not one who takes a lot of pills, but there are times when you absolutely need it. And that was very helpful. And so it was interesting, you said it's intuitive. So walking, if you can walk, walking's always good, isn't it?
Yes, yeah, to activate, to get out of, it's interesting because movement as a general term is useful for people that have back pain. So not doing repetitive movement. So if you sit for too long, or you stand for too long, or
Yeah.
you walk for too long, and your back is irritable, then you are going to cause more discomfort.
Right.
So it's about trying to mix up your movement patterns as best as you can.
And to try and do some gentle stretches, and be it yoga or Pilates, or just the cat-cow when you're on all fours and you dip down and then you go up like a cat. I mean, normally those are very good. I couldn't do those, but I can now. So I'm just, and I think it's 2 weeks since I did my back in. I may post this video in another couple of weeks, but when we're talking now, I've been back at work this week, and I have not had a chance to exercise. I was going to try a little yoga class, and I didn't have any time. But what I did this morning before I came in, I did on YouTube, I did a 15-minute, I was quite nervous, and I thought I'll just try it and see how it goes. And I just did 15 minutes, and it was low impact, sort of cardio stretches with no weights.
Fantastic.
And I was very careful of twisting movements, because I know you said to avoid twisting, and I can still feel my back doesn't like it. So I just did that, and that is literally the first, other than walking, the first exercise I've done.
And how did your body respond to that?
Well, I only did that about an hour or so ago.
So you still need to
Funny enough,
check the response.
As I'm sitting here and I'm going like that, I am slightly uncomfortable. My lower back feels
still not 100% right.
No, it's definitely not 100% right. And you did say, because I'm a very impatient person, so a week ago I said to you, I cannot believe how long this is going on. And you said, well, it's a week. I said, that's a really long time. You said, no. And I said, well, I'll be completely better when I die, when the pain dies down. And you said, well, it is going to take a little while.
I'm glad that you mentioned that, because we've also had this conversation of like the phases of healing. And the first portion is about pain control. So it's about understanding that you've got an injury, you're not making a big deal about it, understanding that it's going to be short-lived, that initial painful episode. And then the next phase is like getting motion into the joint, and I sort of use the terminology motion is lotion, for the joints.
I like that, motion is lotion.
And so you start to get a bit of movement, the body starts to recognize that the injury is not as bad as what it thought initially. The spasm starts to die down, and so you get a bit of strength, a bit of mobility, strength, mobility back into the joints. And then you move into the phase of where you start to look at long term, how do you solve this problem, and how do you stop yourself from being in a similar position to what you were in initially. So these are the phases that you need to go through, and a lot of people that come to see us in private practice sometimes expect us to put a band-aid on the problem and to solve it straight away, which was your expectation initially.
I am one of those people.
Yeah. And
I like an instant result.
Yeah, and I think that's just what we've become accustomed to. And like with Amazon, you can place an order, you can get it like the same day or next day. So we live in a world where we want to microwave things, and we put it in the microwave 30 seconds and we hope it's done.
Yeah.
And musculoskeletal problems like back pain, it doesn't really respond like that. So it's a journey that you have to go on.
It is a journey, yes.
And it's the initial phase of healing, then it's the movement, then it's the long-term approach to solving the problem permanently, and that's going to take a bit of work, a bit of dedication to exercise, and it's about changing habits, movement patterns, and understanding a whole range of things that you need to do for the best as you go on your journey.
And I think, and it is an important, one does have to be patient, and I remember you said to me that so many of your patients are people who've had what I've had, and they feel better, and then they just go for it again, and then they come back and they say, my back was all better, and now it's gone and I'm in terrible pain again.
So then I'll bring you back to the conversation we had earlier on about load and capacity.
Yeah.
Right? So when you first hurt yourself, you could load your body to a certain point because your capacity to deal with that load was at a certain level. Now you've done your back in, so your capacity goes here.
So it will have lowered.
It will have lowered automatically because you just can't deal with the same amount of stress on the body or the same amount of movement or exercise, whatever you want to call it, as you could before you did the injury. So then your ability to load the body is way down here. Now all of a sudden the pain is gone, so you assume that you can load back up here where you were before you did the injury, and it's not the case. So then you go, okay, I can go and play tennis, I can do all the things I used to do, and it's a recipe for disaster.
So you have to build up slowly
Build
and
up
carefully.
slowly.
You have to find what your capacity is,
That's right.
and which is what I did today. I mean, I haven't worked out, in 2 or 3 weeks, and I did a very gentle thing. And I, to be honest, and I remember we had this conversation, and I'm terrified because it was only like a week ago I was in such pain. So I'm terrified of doing that. So I will be doing it, building up very slowly. Yes.
And then one other thing I wanted to say, actually, just on the topic when you mentioned early on about what causes like this acute episode and what causes your back problem. The other things to consider is nutrition, sleep has a major impact on it,
Really?
and your ability to cope with stress also affects your resilience from a musculoskeletal perspective. So injuring a joint, injuring a muscle, all of that has got a negative effect on your ability to cope with load or your ability to cope with stress. And muscles and tendons also respond to the correct nutrition, the right amount of sleep.
So are you referring to once you've hurt yourself in the recovery, or do you mean they could be the cause for
They could be the contributing factors
to the back going out?
To the back going out in the first instance, yeah.
Really?
Because it's like if you are, and we see that all the time with athletes, and if you go and you exercise at a certain level, if you are stressed, if you are not sleeping well, if you're consuming excessive amounts of alcohol, if you are, not eating what you should be eating, then automatically your ability to cope with that level of stress on the body, the muscles, the tendons, the joints are not able to cope with it. And then automatically you start to, have a little bit of an episode. And so, on holiday, you tend to almost let your hair down a little bit.
Yeah.
Sometimes you sleep a little bit more, sometimes you don't. Sometimes you don't move as much, maybe you consume a little bit more alcohol, maybe your diet goes slightly out the window. So all of those key things can contribute as well to a painful episode.
Wow. Well, that is very, very interesting. Thank you so much. And we'll talk again.
Yes.